back to English from A to Z. So if you're joining us for this deep dive, there's a pretty good chance you're standing right on that edge. You know the feeling.
The plateau.
Exactly, the plateau. You can probably read complex articles, you might pass every single grammar quiz they throw at you, but then, when it's time to actually speak...
That's the moment of truth.
It is. When it's time to move that knowledge from your brain to your mouth, when you have to open up and just speak, that's when the hesitation kicks in. You feel, I don't know, stuck.
Or nervous.
Yeah.
You're suddenly searching for that one perfect vocabulary word.
Yes. Or you're trying to mentally check the verb conjugation before you even say anything. It's got to be the single biggest psychological barrier for advanced learners.
It really is.
How do I finally stop studying English like it's a subject in school and start, living it as a real tool for communication?
Well, that moment of hesitation you just described, that's the real enemy of fluency. It truly is. It's the gap between knowing all the rules and having that automatic skill.
Okay, so it's a gap between knowledge and skill.
Precisely. We
Yeah.
see it all the time. Learners get to this point where their passive understanding is, almost native level. They can understand everything.
Yeah.
But their active ability to generate speech, it's still slow. It feels laborious.
Why is that?
Because they're waiting. They're waiting for this ideal moment to speak perfectly.
A moment that never actually arrived.
It never comes. Spoken language is never perfect.
Exactly. And look, that is why this deep dive is so crucial today. We were given this extremely practical, really high-impact roadmap. It's extracted directly from a resource called Speak English Fluently, step by step.
A very direct title.
It is. So our mission today is to cut through all the noise, to actually define what fluency truly means, and then give you an accelerated path forward. We're talking about 8 actionable steps.
And these aren't just theories.
No, not at all. These are steps you can weave into your daily routine for real, for measurables, and I think this is the most important part, for automatic improvement.
And the approach here is fundamentally about, let's call it behavioral engineering. It's not about traditional classroom learning.
Right, no textbooks.
The sources are very clear on this. We were not talking about doing endless grammar reviews. We are talking about creating simple, repetitive habits that actually, rewire the neural pathways in your brain.
So it's about connecting your thoughts directly to your vocal cords.
Without that hesitation step. This is the big difference between learning about English and training yourself, physically and mentally, to use English.
It almost sounds like we're providing the listener with the behavioral science behind mastering a language.
That's a great way to put it. We know you're already well-informed, and we know your time is valuable. So the core benefit of this deep dive is efficiency.
Getting the maximum result for the time you put in.
Exactly. You will leave this conversation knowing precisely where to apply your focused study time for the maximum return. If you implement this strategy, every single minute you invest will directly contribute to building genuine comfort and confidence.
Not just collecting more passive knowledge that sits in your head.
Right. This is about activation.
I love that framing.
Yeah.
Genuine comfort and confidence. Okay, so let's jump straight in. Let's get to the first pillar. And what's surprising is that it's not a physical practice. It's not a vocabulary list.
Yeah.
It's the internal change. It's the psychological prerequisite that has to happen before any of these other learning techniques can even work.
It's the foundation for everything else. Step 1 is that crucial psychological leap. You have to change your mindset.
Okay.
And the source material defines this perfectly. It says, fluency is about speaking comfortably, not speaking perfectly.
That sounds so simple, but when you really think about it, it's profoundly liberating, isn't it?
It's everything.
So why is focusing on perfection so destructive for fluency, especially for those learners who are, really high achievers in other areas of their life?
Well, it creates what we can call the perfection trap. These learners, they hold themselves to this standard of grammatical and lexical accuracy.
A standard that even native speakers don't meet.
Not even close. not in spontaneous conversation. The source material really highlights that this paralyzing fear of making a mistake, it forces them to silently construct a flawless sentence in their heads first.
Right, they're composing an email in their mind before they speak.
They are. They're analyzing the verb tenses, they're double-checking the prepositions, all before they even attempt to say a word.
And while they're doing that whole internal fact check, the moment is gone. The conversation has already moved on.
It's gone.
And the person they're talking to just sees them hesitating and probably assumes they don't know the answer. But the reality is they know the answer perfectly well. They're just stuck in that analytical loop.
Exactly. That high cognitive load that's devoted to self-correction, that's what kills your speed. It kills your flow. Your brain is dedicating all its precious working memory resources to editing, not to generating.
That's a powerful distinction, editing versus generating.
And the source, it offers this radical but really essential revaluation of errors. It says, mistakes are not a sign of failure or weakness.
Okay, so what are they?
They are proof that you are learning. They're just data points. That's all they are.
Proof that you are learning. I like that. That shifts the entire focus. So if I make a mistake and say someone corrects me, or even if I just notice it myself later, I've actually just strengthened a neural pathway.
You have.
I learned something concrete through the act of producing language, through output, that I just couldn't have learned from input alone.
And this is what the material calls the unlocking moment. It suggests that the instant a learner lets go of that burden of perfection, they unlock their true ability to communicate.
And communication is the actual goal here.
It's the whole point.
Yeah.
Communication is about transferring complex ideas, intent, emotion. And you achieve that functionally through being intelligible, through rhythm, through confidence,
Yeah.
not through textbook grammar.
So, okay, the goal is intelligibility, not perfection. But how does a learner actually integrate this mindset shift into their daily life? I mean, how do you just stop being so hard on yourself?
It demands total acceptance, both of the process and, frankly, of yourself. You have to accept that your personal accent, the sound of your first language bleeding into your second, is perfectly acceptable. It's part of who you are.
And it doesn't usually hinder communication.
Rarely. You also have to accept that you're going to have necessary pauses. Even native speakers pause to think. And critically, you have to accept that errors are an inevitable and actually an essential part of the motor training for your mouth.
So you're saying stop fighting reality.
Stop fighting the reality of the learning process, which is messy. And sometimes you stutter and it's imperfect. The moment you stop fighting that, you allow the flow to actually begin. The goal is to move from a state of self-judgment to one of self-observation.
Okay, so step one is fundamentally about taking your foot off the emotional and psychological brake pedal.
Exactly.
Stop grading yourself. Embrace the messiness.
Yes. And with that psychological hurdle finally cleared, we can move to the absolute foundation, which is step two. Input is non-negotiable.
Okay, input, listening.
The source material is completely unequivocal on this point. You cannot speak a language you haven't heard massive amounts of.
Right.
And crucially, you cannot speak English fluently if you haven't internalized the music of the language.
The music. I like that. It makes complete sense, though. Speaking is, in so many ways, just an echo of what we've already absorbed. So if you want to sound fast and natural, you need to know what fast and natural actually sounds like. You need the data.
And this brings us to the immersion strategy. The absolute necessity of surrounding yourself with English every single day. And we have to emphasize daily.
This isn't about sitting down to study.
Not at all. It's about shaping your environment. The source suggests podcasts, videos, streaming TV shows, even just ambient conversation. The key is to make English inescapable in your non-study time.
And you know what I found really motivating in the sources was the part about the daily minimum. We so often feel overwhelmed, thinking we need, a 3-hour study block to make any progress.
Yeah, which is impossible for most people.
Right. But the material emphasizes that even just 10 minutes a day of focused input can start to reshape your brain. Now, why is 10 minutes a day more potent than, say, 2 hours every Sunday?
This taps directly into the principles of neuroplasticity and memory consolidation.
Okay.
Your brain forms and strengthens these neural connections through consistent spaced repetition. A 3-hour marathon session just creates momentary fatigue, and those connections, they begin to weaken almost immediately after you stop.
So you lose it as fast as you gained it.
Pretty much. But 10 minutes, repeated every day, forces the brain to revisit and reinforce those same pathways over and over again. This consistency, this constant engagement, is what turns that fragile knowledge into a hardwired habit.
So it's not really about the total volume, it's about the regularity of the stimulation.
That's all about regularity.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's talk about the quality of the listening. What should you be paying attention to during that 10 minutes? Is it just having it on in the background?
Well, volume is important, but quality is paramount. The material advises focusing heavily on the natural rhythm and the intonation of the language. This is often called prosody.
The music.
The music, exactly. English is what's known as a stress-timed language. We don't give equal weight to every single word. We stress the content, words, nouns, verbs, adjectives, and we tend to swallow the function words.
Like prepositions and articles, the A in, on.
Exactly. So the listener should be actively trying to hear how speakers connect words together, where they put the stress on syllables to create meaning, and where they pause for effect.
So the goal isn't just recognizing individual words, it's about recognizing the patterns, the flow.
Precisely. And this ties right into the core cognitive shift that the source advocates for. They use this really beautiful analogy. They say, listen like a child absorbing a language, not like a student studying for a test.
That's a huge difference.
A huge difference. A student is analyzing grammar rules. A student is translating in their head. A child is just absorbing these sound meaning packages holistically without that intermediary step of internal translation.
They're basically building an internal database of acoustic patterns and tying them directly to a context and a meaning. The analytical part of their brain is, for a moment, bypassed.
And that is the key to making speech automatic. When you listen analytically, you are constantly involving your prefrontal cortex, the slow, reasoning, analytical part of your brain.
This editor.
The editor, yes. But when you listen for patterns, for prosody, for whole phrases, which we'll talk about a lot more later, you're feeding the subcortical structures of the brain. Those are responsible for fast, automatic linguistic processing.
So you're training a different part of your brain.
A much faster part. This massive, consistent input, which should ideally be what we call comprehensible input, meaning material that is slightly challenging, but you can still understand most of it. This is the necessary precondition for high-speed output. If you flood the system with this kind of input consistently, the speaking mechanism has enough data to eventually operate on autopilot.
So, to recap, step 1, forgive yourself, embrace the mess. Step 2, flood your brain consistently with the music of English. So now that the input mechanism is working, how do we start using all that absorption to actually activate our speech muscles?
Well, that takes us to step 3. This is the essential bridge from that passive listening we just talked about to active speaking, and that is imitation.
Imitation. Specifically through a technique that's often called shadowing. This is where you physically train your mouth and your whole vocal apparatus to move in English patterns.
This is where we really have to emphasize treating English speaking as a physical motor skill. It's not purely an intellectual exercise.
It's like learning a sport.
It's very much like learning a sport. Your mouth, your tongue, your throat muscles, they require specific training to produce English, sounds quickly and smoothly, especially if you want to achieve that natural rhythm we just discussed in step 2.
Okay, so this step encourages the listener to choose a speaker that they genuinely admire or like. It could be an actor, a specific podcaster, or a YouTuber. Why is that personal element, the fact that you have to like the voice, so critical here.
Because imitation, and especially the kind of intensive repetition that shadowing requires, it can get tedious. It can get boring very quickly.
Sure.
So you need a model that holds your attention and your enthusiasm. Someone who inspires you to match not just their words, but their tone, their emotional register, the speaker's energy. You're basically training yourself to inhabit the language, and that's so much easier if you actually like the personality you're mimicking.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's get into the mechanics of it. The source material is very specific about what to copy. It's not just the words.
No.
It's the pauses, the emotional tone, and maybe most importantly, the stress patterns. How exactly should someone practice this shadowing technique?
Well, shadowing involves speaking either simultaneously with the source material or just slightly behind it. That's what we call echo shadowing.
Echo shadowing.
Yes. And you should be trying to match the pitch, the volume, the rhythm. But the most effective method, especially for building that motor memory, is echo shadowing. You repeat the phrase immediately after you hear it, but you keep the source audio constantly flowing. You're attempting to reproduce the sound pattern exactly as you hear it.
So just to be clear, I'm not waiting until the speaker finishes a whole sentence. I'm actually starting maybe half a second behind them, almost chasing their words and their rhythm.
You are chasing them.
Prologue.
Precisely. This technique is incredibly powerful because it forces you to engage the motor pathways in your brain while the auditory input is still active.
Ah, so it's happening at the same time.
It trains the mouth and the brain to move in English simultaneously. And that's how it bypasses that slow internal translation process completely.
That's interesting. What's the difference between this and just reading something aloud?
It's a great question. When you simply read aloud from a page, your brain is still translating from print to sound. There's an extra step. When you shadow, you're moving directly from sound to action. You're focusing on the articulatory loops, the muscle memory required for flowing speech delivery.
The source material is very strong on how effective shadowing is. It calls it one of the fastest ways to build fluency. So if the goal here is speed, the focus has to shift. You mentioned that the goal is not to understand every single word.
And that is the critical mindset shift for this particular exercise. The focus is entirely on the physical delivery. It's about prosody, rhythm, and confidence.
So I shouldn't stop if I don't know a word.
No, absolutely not. If you try to stop and analyze the meaning while you're shadowing, you'll break the rhythm completely. The primary objective is to train the physical apparatus so that when your brain does generate a thought later, your mouth already knows how to deliver it smoothly without tripping over unfamiliar sounds or stress patterns.
You're pre-programming the physical mechanics of speaking.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That's a massive takeaway for me. Viewing speaking as a trainable motor skill, almost like learning to play an instrument. If you practice the scales, which is the shadowing, then the symphony, the actual conversation, becomes so much easier.
It does. And once we've trained the ear with step 2 and trained the mouth with step 3, we can move to step 4. Practice with purpose.
Practice with purpose.
This step is all about maximizing your limited time by critically evaluating what you practice. It really critiques the inefficiency of practicing random academic sentences that you will never, ever use outside of a classroom.
Oh, I think we all remember those archaic textbook phrases that sound grammatically perfect, but are just completely unnatural in a real conversation. We need to stop rehearsing sentences about, I don't know, the diligent gardener is watering the crimson hydrangeas.
Absolutely. No native speaker talks like that, ever. The goal here is strict situational relevance. You need to practice real conversations and scenarios that you, the learner, genuinely anticipate using. Fluency grows fastest when your practice is tied directly to your high-frequency, high-stakes communication needs.
Okay, so what are some of those? The source provides a really useful, essential list of situations to practice.
It does. And they're highly functional.
Like ordering food.
Ordering food, introducing yourself and your background.
Talking about your day.
And a very important one, explaining or defending your opinions.
Right. If you can master just those four types of scenarios, you really have the foundational pillars to navigate pretty much any daily interaction.
You really do. If you master the ordering process, for example, you've automated the vocabulary for common requests and how to deal with minor problems. If you master introductions, you're comfortable getting a conversation started.
And if you can master talking about your day and your opinions, you can hold a sustained conversation.
Right. You can build connection.
So what's the recommended technique for automation here? The source mentions creating your own mini conversations and running through them every day. How deep should that scripting go? Should I be writing out the exact words every single time?
Initially, yes. Scripting is crucial at the beginning to identify and isolate the necessary vocabulary and sentence structures. But the repetition should be focused on internalizing the pattern, not just memorizing the script word for word.
So what would that look like?
Well, if you know you need to order coffee, for example, you should practice 3 variations. One is a standard order, another is an apology for being slow, and a third is how to correct a mistake.
Oh, that's smart. Like, excuse me, I think I asked for skim milk, not whole milk.
Exactly. That ensures flexibility.
Okay.
So your brain doesn't just freeze if the barista deviates from the one script you rehearsed.
Right. But the source takes this idea of purposeful practice even further with the integration of self-talk.
Yes. This encourages turning mundane, non-English tasks into active practice opportunities. You just talk to yourself while you're cooking or driving or cleaning. This is often ignored, but it is one of the most effective fluency accelerators there is.
So you're forcing your internal monologue to run in English. Okay, I am now putting the kettle on, the water is boiling, I should check the time, that kind of thing.
It's highly, highly effective
Mm.
because it forces instantaneous, real-time vocabulary retrieval that's tied to concrete objects and actions. It completely bypasses that translation process.
I see.
When you narrate your actions in English, you're reducing your brain's hesitation time from seconds down to milliseconds. So when a real conversation finally starts, your brain is already warmed up. It's already operating in the target language.
So this purposeful, relevant practice, it minimizes that retrieval delay that plagues so many intermediate speakers.
That's the entire goal.
That makes perfect sense. We're essentially building automated, real-life response libraries in our heads. Okay, so we've gone from internal acceptance through mass input to targeted motor training and now purposeful situational practice. Now, how do we make sure we're acquiring the right functional language pieces to make those trained conversations sound smooth and spontaneous?
That brings us to step 5. This introduces the smart approach to vocabulary acquisition, which is maybe the single greatest efficiency gain for fluency.
Which is?
Learning chunks, not disconnected lists of single words. The source material fundamentally rejects the inefficiency of learning dog, fast, and quickly as 3 separate items.
This is a huge paradigm shift from how we were all taught with vocabulary cards. If I learn a single word like honest, my brain still has to do the work. It has to apply grammar rules to construct a usable phrase.
Like, to be honest, or I need to be honest with you.
Right, and that multi-step process is the very definition of slow speaking.
It is the enemy of spontaneity. When your brain has to sequentially select a word, then conjugate a verb, then choose a preposition, you just overload the limited capacity of your working memory. It can't handle it all at once.
So what's the alternative?
The source directs us toward the power of learning conversational chunks, or ready-made expressions. We're leveraging what's known as the lexical hypothesis.
Okay, what is that?
It's the theory that a massive amount of fluent, native-like speech consists of these prefabricated sequences that we just pull from memory.
So when I learn the phrase, as far as I know, I'm not actually learning 4 separate words. I'm learning one functional unit.
You're learning one unit.
Oh.
Exactly. You are acquiring a complete pre-assembled package of meaning that requires zero grammatical analysis in real time.
The source provides some great examples of these.
It does. As far as I know, to be honest, at the end of the day, or even just common collocations like heavy rain instead of just heavy and rain, or make a decision instead of the verb decide.
These really are conversational lubricants, aren't they?
They are. They dramatically increase your speech smoothness, they make you sound much more natural, and they bridge the gap between sentences while your brain is preparing the next big idea.
And here's the really profound part, the cognitive mechanism behind why this works so well. You said learning vocabulary in phrases allows the learner to speak faster without translating in their head.
Yes, your brain retrieves the whole package from your long-term memory instantly. Instead of assembling a phrase word by word, which is a slow analytical process, you're deploying a four-word unit instantly. That's a fast retrieval process.
So instead of my brain having to process, say, 10 small linguistic units to form a sentence, it's maybe only processing 3 large chunks.
Right.
That reduction in cognitive load must be massive.
It is the absolute key to speed and flow. It frees up your mental resources. Your working memory, which is highly constrained, is no longer busy assembling grammar. It's now free to focus on your overall message or on listening to the other person's response and planning the next stage of the conversation.
So by increasing the size of the units your brain processes, you're essentially simulating the fluency of a native speaker.
Who relies almost entirely on these highly automated lexical chunks.
Yeah.
Yes. This is what smart language acquisition looks like. It's focusing on utility and retrieval speed over just the sheer volume of single words.
Okay, fantastic. Now that brings us to step 6, which is the necessary but often painful step of self-correction, recording yourself.
Ah, yes. This is the step that learners resist the most. It triggers a massive amount of self-consciousness.
It's uncomfortable.
It really is, and we have to validate that discomfort. Listening back to your own voice, especially when you're speaking a language you're still acquiring, can feel incredibly awkward. But the discomfort is temporary, and the reward is exponential.
For a learner who is just terrified of this step, are there specific, maybe staged ways to approach it? Maybe starting with something low stakes rather than trying to record spontaneous speech right away?
Absolutely. The source implicitly suggests a gradual approach. Don't start with trying to record your spontaneous self-talk.
Okay, so what's step 1?
Start by just reading a short, prepared script, maybe 3 lines from one of your shadowing sessions. Then you can move on to reading a poem or an excerpt from a book you like. The objective here is purely technical.
Just record, play back, and compare.
That's it. Compare your pronunciation to the source material. Only once you are comfortable with that process should you then progress to recording your spontaneous self-talk or your mini conversations.
That staged approach, it removes the pressure of having to generate content and deliver it at the same time.
Right. It lets you focus purely on the delivery mechanics.
So what are the specific benefits that the sources detail that make this discomfort worthwhile?
Well, first, and this might sound counterintuitive, is the confidence boost.
Mm.
The material notes that learners often realize they actually sound much better than they mentally perceive.
Our internal critic is always the harshest.
It is. The recording provides objective evidence that often contradicts that negative self-perception. And second, it creates the essential auditory feedback loop. When you speak, you hear yourself through bone conduction in your skull, which distorts the sound.
But when you listen to the recording,
You hear yourself as other people hear you.
it's the objective mirror. I can finally pinpoint those specific issues with pronunciation or stress or intonation that I was completely blind to in real time.
Precisely. You might think you're using the sound correctly, but the recording reveals you're actually substituting a D or a C sound. This gives you a clear, unambiguous target for your practice.
Which is so much more efficient.
It's invaluable for rapid improvement because you stop wasting time correcting things that aren't broken, and you can focus solely on the high-impact errors that the recording revealed. By embracing this painful but necessary step, you accelerate self-correction and move from a subjective feeling to objective evidence.
Okay, so we've acquired the functional language units, the chunks, and we're using self-recording to refine our delivery and build confidence. Now we have to force the brain to use all these skills in the ultimate pressure test, real human interaction.
Exactly. Step 7 is the culmination of everything, conversation. The source material is adamant that the act of speaking teaches you more than any grammar book or isolated practice ever will. It is the crucible where all of the previous 6 steps are tested and cemented.
This is where theory crashes head-on into reality, isn't it? You can memorize all the rules you want, but until you're forced to respond in real time, deal with interruptions, manage unexpected vocabulary, and navigate that social give and take, you haven't really learned to speak.
The pressure is the ultimate teacher.
It is.
Absolutely. Even if you freeze up for a moment or you make a lot of mistakes, the experience itself creates these powerful, emotional, and context-rich memory hooks. The source emphasizes the critical importance of engaging in real, messy, human conversation.
Messy. I like that word.
It has to be genuine interaction, where the goal is connection, not correction.
So, for the listener who feels ready to jump into the fire, but maybe they don't live in an English-speaking environment, what are the practical avenues suggested for finding these essential conversation partners?
Well, the good news is the barrier to entry for finding partners today is minimal. It's almost zero. The source suggests several really accessible methods.
Such as?
Language exchange apps. The pressure on those is mutually low because both people are learners.
Right. Everyone is in the same boat.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or joining online communities focused on a shared hobby, gaming, cooking, fitness, where English is the lingua franca.
Oh.
Or simply talking to English-speaking friends, even if they sometimes switch back to your native language. The goal is just to maximize the opportunities for communicative exchange.
And what is it that happens in these messy conversations that is so much more beneficial than just practicing alone?
You are forced to utilize all your acquired skills instantly. Your brain has to retrieve those chunks from step 5 under pressure. It has to use the rhythm you trained by shadowing in step 3. And it has to integrate the feedback you're getting from the listener's face and reactions.
And there's also the negotiation of meaning.
A huge part of it. Native speakers will often naturally simplify or repeat things when you look confused. Learning to interpret those signals is a massive part of functional fluency.
It's where fluency really accelerates because the pace is set by the real world, not by a textbook exercise. That direct correlation is key.
It is. The source reiterates it again and again. The more real conversations you have, the faster your fluency develops. Conversation forces instant retrieval. It forces listener adjustment, rapid error correction, and critically, it builds psychological stamina.
Stamina, the ability to keep going.
The ability to keep talking even when you know you are making errors.
Mm-hmm.
And that loops you directly back to step 1, to the mindset shift. You stop waiting until you feel ready. You just start. And the conversation itself is what makes you ready.
And that finally brings us to the non-negotiable key that underpins the success of all 7 previous steps. Step 8, consistency.
This is where we debunk the myth that you need these massive study blocks. The source contrasts the inefficiency of studying for, say, 3 exhausting hours once a week with the staggering power of small daily actions, even just 10 minutes every single day.
So why does that weekly marathon fail, even though it provides more total hours of study time?
It's a failure of memory consolidation and habit formation. That 3-hour marathon, it just causes mental fatigue, and the neural connections you establish are weak, and they rapidly decay over the following 6 days of inactivity.
So you're in a cycle of learning and forgetting.
Exactly. But small daily action engages the compound effect. Every single day, you revisit the language, you're refreshing and strengthening those pathways. This high-frequency engagement is what integrates the language into your implicit memory, and that is where true automaticity resides.
This really does sound like a behavioral science approach to language learning. It's like we're not relying on motivation, which is fleeting and unreliable.
It
We're
is.
relying on habit structure, which is dependable.
Precisely. We need to employ principles like the minimum effective dose and habit stacking. That 10 minutes of daily input from step 2 or 10 minutes of shadowing from step 3, that is your minimum effective dose. You do it regardless of how motivated you feel.
And the source's analogy here is so powerful. It frames English practice as a non-negotiable daily ritual.
Yes, it suggests treating English like brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
It's just something automatic that you do without thinking or debating it.
It needs to become an integrated habit. You don't wake up in the morning and have a psychological debate about whether you have the energy to brush your teeth.
You just do it.
It's just a foundational part of your routine.
And that is the ultimate aim of these 8 steps, to make speaking and listening and practicing English automatic. It doesn't have to be formal study. It can be 10 minutes of self-talk while you're commuting or listening to a favorite podcast while you make your coffee, as long as it is consistent.
When we synthesize this entire comprehensive roadmap, changing your mindset, constant input, deliberate imitation, purposeful practice, learning phrase chunks, recording yourself, seeking real conversation, and then maintaining that rigorous consistency, we see that fluency becomes, as the source concludes, not just possible, but inevitable. The whole structure supports that outcome.
That holistic view of the process, it provides the structure you need to move past that intermediate plateau. It clarifies that fluency isn't some destination you arrive at with a single breakthrough.
No.
It's the cumulative result of small, consistent behavioral changes.
Before we wrap this all up, let's just quickly solidify those 8 pillars one more time to make sure everyone listening knows exactly where to direct their energy starting today.
Okay, the 8 pillars, the roadmap to inevitability. 1. Mindset. Focus on comfort. Embrace your errors. 2. Listen. Massive, consistent input. Listening for the music of the language.
3. Imitate.
Imitate. Shadowing to build that physical motor memory and rhythm. 4. Practice with purpose. Focusing your practice on real, relevant situational scenarios.
5. Phrases in chunks.
Yes, phrase chunks. Learning multi-word units to reduce that cognitive load and speak faster. 6. Record. Using that objective mirror for targeted self-correction and for building confidence.
And the last 2.
7. Speak. Conversation. Engaging in messy, real human interaction as the ultimate accelerator. And finally, 8. Consistent. Small, daily action, prioritizing frequency over intensity.
This deep dive really has provided the analysis, the strategy, and the mechanics. It's a shortcut to being well-informed about the learning process itself. We respect your time by cutting straight to these high-impact techniques. You should now know exactly where to point your energy to break through that plateau.
And if you take just one thing away from this whole comprehensive plan, let it be the emphasis on step 5 and what it implies for your speed. We spend a good amount of time analyzing how learning phrase chunks bypasses that slow analytical brain and moves retrieval into your automatic long-term memory.
That cognitive leap, using a phrase like at the end of the day as one single unit rather than trying to translate 4 separate words.
Exactly. So here is the provocative thought for you to carry forward and, more importantly, act upon today. Choose one 3 to 5 word phrase chunk that you have heard recently. It could be, as far as I know, or I'm looking forward to, something common.
Okay.
And commit to using it 3 times today, either in a real conversation or even just in your purposeful self-talk. Force yourself to retrieve that entire chunk instantly, bypassing your internal translation reflex. That immediate forced application begins the critical process of building the habit, and that is what makes fluency truly inevitable.
That is the perfect way to turn theory into immediate action. Thank you for sharing your sources and for engaging in this deep dive with us. We sincerely hope this comprehensive roadmap gives you the confidence and the structure you need to finally unlock that genuine English fluency. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.